Welcome everyone to Grid Live Wrap Up with me, Ben Schneider and Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish. We invite you to participate in the chat room. We'd love to answer your questions on the air and share your opinions. We'll start though with Formula E and how three major incidents overshadowed the second race. We'll start with the concerning story about a missile intercept occurring in the city of Riyadh.
Shortly following the second Formula E race's conclusion, multiple explosions were heard with flashes in the sky. A Saudi-led military coalition announced that a ballistic missile was intercepted over the city of Riyadh. There were no fatalities reported, but debris did fall into neighborhoods, according to the local state media. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman did attend the Formula E event. Despite online speculation, there haven't been any confirmed reports on where the intended target was, and we'll definitely go more in depth on this story Wednesday on Grid Tonight. Formula One is scheduled to race in Saudi Arabia later in the year. We know there's ongoing international tensions between Saudi Arabia, the United States, and the Middle East in general. We will report on the latest information, safety concerns, and why we're seeing an increase in international sports participating in Saudi Arabia.
The news occurring after the race definitely overshadowed everything that happened. And of course, it was a shortened race with a serious incident, starting with the crash that led to the end of the race. We saw Alex Lynn in the Mahindra sliding upside down in the video. Of course, later today, we saw the video. Essentially, he rear-ended Mitch Evans being squeezed up against the wall. After being squeezed up against the wall, hitting the back end of Mitch Evans' car. Car went straight up. Then it started going backwards and essentially landed upside down. Thankfully for the halo device and, of course, the roll hoop, Alex Lynn was taken to a local hospital for precautionary measures. He was released, and thankfully he's going to be scheduled to race in the Rome E-Prix. Formula E has seen a lot of beating and banging and has become known more for the essentially what a lot of folks call argy-bargy racing on the street courses. Should Formula E do something about essentially with these second generation cars addressing the aggressive and the beating and banging we're seeing on the track?
I mean, Joe, this is not stock car racing at all. This is Formula E, and I can't say that I'm surprised that we've seen something like this. And you mentioned all the beating, banging, the argy bargy, a major incident. What was going to happen at some point? It was inevitable, and we're very lucky to see that Alex Lynn was able to walk away. I understand there was a lot of confusion at the end of the race. I know we were on air yesterday, Grid Live pre-race, and we were providing live updates along the way. And we went off with like 5 minutes to go, and we thought we were under caution just for a mini pile up with Mitch Evans been involved, and we saw Sebastian Ogier stop. We just thought that Formula E decided to end the race because of that. And then we got a report that Alex Lynn was been transported to the hospital, and we were wondering what in the world was going on. And then saw the video online of Alex Lynn sliding upside down, and I was like, oh my goodness, it was just a really crazy incident, and we're very lucky to escape the magnitude of Alex Lynn's accident. It reminds me of the very first race in Formula E history when we saw Nick Heidfeld go in the air. So I definitely think that Formula E needs to address the on track etiquette and all of the beating and banging we're seeing in a series that is not stock cars.
Yeah, it reminds me, speaking of stock cars, of when NASCAR kind of did the opposite and said, boys have at it right around the beginning of the 2010s decade. Like you said, Kobe, this isn't stock car racing. You don't expect that in a single seater series. So is it to a point where you need to see Formula E organize a drivers meeting and get everybody together and have a serious conversation about that? I don't know that we would go that far yet, but you definitely have to look at individual drivers and individual instances. And if a driver's pushed the line or gone too far, you have to come down on them and make it clear that that kind of racing isn't acceptable. I'm certainly glad that Alex Lynn was discharged from the hospital with no serious injuries, and he'll be back for Rome. It looks a lot like you mentioned Nick Heidfeld's crash. I was reminded of Mark Webber's crash in Formula One at Valencia in 2010. So yeah, just very lucky to see that he was all right, and hopefully we don't see any major incidents like that going forward.
I would have to agree. I know with Formula E, especially since they're street courses, they're not exactly the fastest vehicles out there when they're on the street courses. It allows for a lot more beating and banging. But definitely getting to a point where that late block or move, whatever it was, that caused this wreck. We also saw as well amazingly, they didn't get more tangled up how the two the Sheeta team drivers, Antonio Felix da Costa, John-Eric Byrne, they made serious contact, but they to keep going. Definitely, I think it's something where it'll be in the best interest for Formula E to address all the drivers in some sort of driver meeting.
Yeah, definitely. It's gonna be interesting to see where we go moving forward here. And before I continue Formula E part, want to give a shout out to our supercars expert Adam, who told me you're gonna be in the chat room tonight. So, Adam, definitely appreciate your expertise on supercars. And if you're in the chat room, feel free to comment your thoughts and opinions when we get to the supercar section a little later in the program. And back to Formula E, Mitch Evans' teammate Sam Burke took the win over Robin Franz and Jean-Eric Vergne. However, Jean-Eric Vergne was disqualified for not completing both attack modes. This promoted his teammate, the defending series champion Antonio Felix da Costa, to third, final spot on the podium. A very chaotic race. Saw only 23 starters with Eduardo Mortara not racing after his scary practice crash. Tried to talk a little fast there. Is this the type of action you anticipated in the season opening race weekend, and will it be the theme for the rest of the season?
Like we were just talking about, Formula E can get a little argy-bargy, as you guys were saying. So I definitely am not surprised to see the kind of racing that we saw this weekend, and I think it's definitely something that we could see a lot of going forward as the season continues on.
Yeah, for the first race of the season, race 1, where we saw Nick de Vries just dominate that race, that was something where we don't really see a whole lot of. We could recall, of course, Antonio Felix da Costa did some of that, but I was starting to think, okay, he won this race. A lot of times we see a person win a race, and that was the only race win of the year. So often in Formula E, we have multiple winners all the time. Race 2, all the action, the passing for the lead, all over the place. We saw a lot of passing, a lot of being and banging as usual too. Definitely was something where race 2 was something more of what I expected for Formula E.
And in race 1, it was dominated by Nick de Vries. However, de Vries had to start 20th and didn't participate in qualifying after Eduardo Mortara's crash. Venturi and Mercedes were forced to sit out qualifying because they both used the same powertrain. Race officials did investigate the incident. Eventually, they were allowed to race. Nick de Vries climbed all the way up to 9th place, securing the points lead, entering the Rome E-Prix. Did Nick de Vries prove he's a title contender and not just another surprise winner in Formula E competition?
I do believe he proved that he could be a title contender, and definitely want to give a shout out to the chat room. We see Adam there with his comment about the Formula E drivers and possibly a talk in the future. When it comes to Nick de Vries, quite often in Formula E, we've seen a driver go out there, they win, and then the rest of the season, they're just mild in the back, especially with the group qualifying format. He didn't get a chance to lay down qualifying lap. He had to start 20th. Comes all the way up to 9th place. That is a really strong effort. And I think that really indicates that he's not just going to be a one-time winner. He could be a multiple race winner, which recently, especially since season 8, since I believe 2018-2019 season, we've had between 6 to 7, 8 different race winners. I think he's going to be one of the race winners that's going to have more than one win.
Yeah, Formula E is definitely one of the more competitive forms of motorsports worldwide. When you look at how many different race winners you get in a year and how many different teams are capable of competing for the win on any given race weekend. In terms of Nick de Vries, we know he's a very talented driver. He won the Formula 2 championship in 2019. And normally, if you do that, it's assumed that you're ready for Formula 1. There just happens to not be a seat available for him at the moment. So he's doing what he can in Formula E. And he also has a great team in Mercedes powering him as well. So I think this weekend is certainly an indication that he's going to be a contender for the championship going forward.
Yes, I definitely think Nick de Vries could be one of the championship contenders this season. And as you mentioned, Ben, Nick de Vries for Formula 2 champion. Unfortunately, no place for him in Formula 1. I think that's a shame. I feel like Nick de Vries is certainly capable of being a Formula 1 driver, but he's still really young. He can go out there, compete for Formula E championships, potentially win a championship or two in Formula E, and still have an opportunity to potentially return to the Formula 1 grid, as we saw this past Formula E season after Antonio Felix da Costa won the championship. He said he had some Formula 1 teams reach out to him about potential opportunities, but he decided to turn it down and race in a competitive environment instead of running for a team that's going to be in the midfield, a back marker, not really able to compete for a race win. So it'll be interesting, like if at times comes if Nick de Vries gets offers from Formula One teams, it's going to be like what's most important to him. Does he want to compete in Formula E, where he can have an opportunity to go out there and win on any given weekend, or will he decide to go to Formula One, where he may or may not be in a competitive ride? And the Rome Prix is scheduled for April 10th. Going into the next race, the Rome Prix, what are 3 things that you'll be watching for?
I'll be looking at BMW to try to score points. They're the only team that didn't get at least 1 point between their 2 drivers this weekend. And I'll also be looking at the 2 race winners, Nick DeVries and Sam Bird. Obviously, we just talked about Nick DeVries, but Sam Bird, great to see him get a victory for Jaguar in his first race weekend with his new team. He's been in Formula E since the series began, and I think he could be a contender for a championship as well if this race weekend's any indication.
I'll be looking at what DS Yoshida can do. Can Antonio Felix Acosta and John-Eric Byrne contend for the win? We saw them a little bit better in race 2, but race 1, nowhere really in sight. Nick DeVries is going to be qualifying out of Group 1, being the points leader. That means he's going to have the worst track conditions. Can he start in the top 10? That'd be a true indicator of how well he can contend for the win. And then for the third point, definitely when it comes to BMW and Reddy Osborne, when it comes to the no points, that's going to be something to watch. But I'll also be watching, can Dragon Penske score points for the second race weekend? Second race in a row. That was a big surprise today.
Yeah, some 3 things I'm going to be looking at. Obviously, the Mercedes duo, Nick DeVries and Stoffel Van Dorn. Yeah, if that first race was any indication of what the Mercedes is capable of, if they can get both cars up there, it's going to be interesting to see what they can do and take the fight to DS Techeetah. Another thing I'll be looking at with DS Techeetah, can Jean-Eric Berg and Antonio Felix da Costa continue their strong form and not get caught up in any potential incidents? I believe in that last race, they made a little contact. It was either race 1 or race 2. Can't remember exactly which one, but there was a little argy-bargy between DS Techeetah teammates. I understand with 2 championship winning drivers on the same team, at some point, there might be a few more issues there. And I understand there might be some conversations of who's the number 1 driver here, because in my opinion, both of them are number 1 drivers with Jean-Eric Berg, Antonio Felix da Costa, and we've seen when 2 number 1s on the same team, it doesn't really end well. And third thing I'm going to be looking at is I'm going to give a shout out to Neo 333. Oliver Turvey was able to score a point, and anyone who follows Formula E, all of you guys know that Neo has really struggled a lot in recent years. And for Oliver Turvey to be able to put that car in the points, that it must feel like a win for Neo.
Has to feel like a win for Neo. Definitely a big weekend race for them. Of course, now switching over to NASCAR, we have to talk about the third different winner of 2020, but it was the driver's second career win, William Byron. William Byron took the win. It was the first for his crew chief in the Cup level for Rudy Vogel. Hendrick Motorsports are now responding to Joe Gibbs Racing. We talked about this yesterday. Joe Gibbs Racing, the other 4-car team, Hendrick Motorsports. Well, here comes Hendrick. They got to win. Essentially, when it comes to William Byron's win, what was the main factor for his win today? Was it having Rudy as the crew chief, the change in track conditions? And is this a team that we could see week in and week out continue for wins?
Honestly, Joe, I think Hendrick Motorsports finally found the right crew chief for William Byron. And I think kind of like we saw with Martin Truex Jr. and Cole Pern, they just clicked together unlike anything that I've ever seen before with Martin Truex Jr. previous in his career. And I think with certain drivers, you need to find the right driver crew chief pairing. And we saw that with Martin Truex Jr. and Cole Pern. And since Cole Pern left NASCAR, we haven't really seen the same type of dominance from Martin Truex Jr., but he's still pretty good in getting the job done. And with William Byron, Rudy Fugel, a championship winning crew chief from Kyle Busch Motorsports, and Rudy really did a really wonderful job with that program over the years. And then I think Hendrick Motorsports might have the steal of the offseason, hiring him and pairing him with William Byron. And it's going to be interesting moving forward to see if William Byron and Rudy Fugel could they potentially get some momentum here and start clicking off some wins in the future.
Rudy Fugel was one of, in my opinion, the best crew chiefs in the Truck Series when he was with Kyle Busch Motorsports. So it's no surprise to see him get an opportunity to move up to the Cup level. And to do it with William Byron, I think you're absolutely right, Kobe. Hendrick certainly picked up one of the biggest steals of the offseason, and certainly not surprising to see them have success so early on. And I expect them to go out and be competitive and probably even get 2 or 3 more wins as we go forward in the rest of the season.
I agree. I see definitely 2 or 3 more wins for William Byron and Rudy. They looked really good today. The track conditions, yes, they changed, but definitely Rudy, William Byron, they work together to make that respond to the car to have a co-driver's front. Here's what William Byron had to say about the win today.
Where do I start? I think honestly, the work and the effort goes back a long ways. You know, getting Rudy on board and just having a guy like that to work with. We really think the same way, and you know, it helps us in a lot of ways to progress through races and communicate well and work through the off season. So I'd say it's a lot to do with the off season prep. And as soon as we got in the race, I mean, the track was super slick to start. We had to start pretty far back, but made our way up, and just had to keep adjusting on the car and kind of finding those little bits. I think the 19 was really strong to start the race. The 17 was surprisingly really good. So we had to kind of work on that, and you know, had a really good restart. The last one, the 2 pushed me super hard down the backstretch, and the car was just good enough. So it's cool when you have cars like that and you can make moves and make them stick. So love this racetrack. It's really fun.
Now, yesterday, I know Adam picked Kyle Larson. We saw him up front towards the end running the high line, but it was Tyler Reddick who was using that high line, was coming strong. He was still disappointed to get second place. I know for Kobe, that was the pick a winner pick for him. So I know a little bit disappointed for Kobe as well, seeing Tyler get second place. However, Tyler Reddick, here's what he had to say to Bob Pockers about getting second place. And of course, Bob Pockers from Fox Sports asking that question.
Obviously, this was a 400-mile race, Bob, and everyone knew that. So I didn't have a very good last restart. We kind of struggled to get our cheddar scratch kitchen Chevy going, and I had just a poor restart, and it was the difference. Unfortunately, that's all there is to it. Needed to be able to hold on better at the start, and just didn't.
Now, several drivers made leaps ahead of their poor starts like Tyler Reddick, William Byron, of course, with his win, and Martin Truex Jr., first top 10 of the year. Only Michael McDowell and Kevin Harvick have top 10s in all 3 races so far this season. Definitely, I know, seeing one of our comments in the chat room, McDowell, Custer, a lot of surprises up there in the top 10. And in fact, that was a big question in the press conference. Here, what Truex had to say when Jeff Gluck from The Athletic asking about the parity level we saw today at the race.
Yeah, I think the rules have been the same for a while, Jeff. And, you know, everybody's had all off season to, you know, kind of work on their stuff and understand where they were last year. And you know, a lot of people obviously made some good decisions on how to get better. So, yeah, definitely seen a lot of guys running up front today that we don't like. But I think it's just, you know, the box that we work in is so small, and the longer we have the same rules package, the closer everybody's going to get.
So does the close competition surprise you so far, especially here at Homestead? Or is this a combination of rough starts for some at Daytona and the excellent opening for drivers like Michael McDowell?
I think if there's one silver lining to the fact that most of these races aren't going to have practice or qualifying this year, it's that everybody goes into the race from lap 1 at the exact same position. I think one of the things that we saw last year with Kyle Busch struggling so much, I think he attributed it to not having practice. I think as a veteran and Gibbs being the team that they are, they're one of the teams that can really utilize practice as an opportunity to get their setup right and make it stronger for the race. And we're seeing it now, in particular with Michael McDowell, who got his 3rd straight top 10 today. Some of these smaller, historically mid-pack teams like Front Row Motorsports having an opportunity to show a lot more speed than we anticipated. And Roush comes to mind as well with Chris Buescher having a good run in the first half of today's race too. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things, but ultimately, if there is any silver lining to not having practice, I think it does maybe increase the parity just a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Ben brought up a lot of good points there. I also agree that it's a combination of a lot of things, and I'm just really, really surprised by all of the comers and goers that we saw today, and then have Michael McDowell win the Daytona 500, Christopher Bell win last weekend at the Daytona Road Course, and William Byron win today, and among all the different people we saw all throughout the field today. You mentioned Chris Buescher had a really good run going, and then as the sun went down, car just kind of went away from him, and that's what we see at Homestead Miami Speedway, especially when you have the day to night transition. The drivers who are the best during the day might not have the best car when the sun goes down, and that's one of the things we saw with Chris Buescher. He had a lightning fast car during the early portions, and then Chris Buescher was just non-existent. But overall, it was just like, if this is going to be what the 2021 NASCAR Cup Series season is going to be, I say bring it on.
Yeah, 3 different race winners, 3 different teams, of course. A lot of folks did not anticipate Front Row Motorsports to be the first team, but Hendrick, Gibbs, they look good. And so far, it seems, especially this race today, really a lot of passing, a lot of great action. But it was a relatively tamed race compared to the Daytona 500. Of course, super speedways are always chaotic, and the road course last weekend as well. We still have several cautions, but plenty of long runs. And early on, it looked like the Penske Force would be the team to beat. In fact, as you mentioned, Chris Buescher, it looked like we would see a Ford in victory lane. Was it a surprise to see that Penske car not contending for the win towards the end of the race?
Yes, it was really shocking because Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano were very strong early, and looked like the Penske cars were going to be contenders, and then they just faded away there during the last portion of the race. And Ryan Blaney got caught up in that incident with Eric Almirola heading onto the backstretch. Unfortunate situation for Blaney there. And then Matt DiBenedetto didn't really have the he didn't really have the greatest finish in the world today, I believe. So definitely not a good day for the Penske cars and the Penske affiliated cars as well.
It was surprising. I wouldn't say it was shocking. And the reason is because of the day to night transition. And I know that back in the day, especially around the Coke 600, which is a day to night race, we'd hear the phrase comers and goers. I think we saw that with the Fords today. I think their cars worked better when the sun was out, but as the race moved on and the sun set and we got into the nighttime under the lights, that's when you started to see them go away. And I don't know exactly what the cause would have been, but I think Ford definitely had their setups set for a hotter track temperature in the daytime, and ultimately that cost them at the end of the race. But that wouldn't have cost them had the race started at noon or 1 p.m. So I don't know, maybe that's something that the noon crowd could get excited about as we continue to have the start time debate.
I know definitely when it comes to the race, that nighttime transition definitely didn't help the Fords. One Ford that did stay up front, of course, besides Kevin Harvick, was Michael McDowell, and definitely looking at their grid rating for the NASCAR Cup Series, Michael McDowell still number 1. That's a surprise that I know going into the season I would not predict it. When it comes to Michael McDowell and his season so far, 3 straight top 10 finishes. Are we starting to look at not Michael McDowell just a one-time surprise winner in the playoffs, but somebody that could run in the top 10s and maybe even advance into the round of essentially even 8 and further in the playoffs?
If you had told me just a few weeks ago that Kevin Harvick would be one of only 2 drivers that would have a top 10 in each of the first 3 races, and the other driver would be Michael McDowell, I would have laughed in your face. I would have said that there's no way Front Row Motorsports would be able to maintain that level of speed. I would say maybe they could get a top 10 at one of the Daytona races, because we know how super speedway racing is, and we know McDowell's a good road course racer. But I don't think anybody could have predicted Front Row and Michael McDowell going out and getting 3 straight top 10s to start the year. Again, it's still early. It's only week 3 in a 36 race season. But they've surprised us this far. Who knows what they're going to be able to do? I don't know. Maybe they put some of that Daytona 500 purse money to good use. But the way the playoffs are these days, if McDowell has a good couple of races, I'd certainly say he's not a lock to be one of the first 4 out at this point.
Yes, Michael McDowell, that 3014 Front Row Motorsports definitely surprised us so far, and it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to continue this form. And we all know I got a little tongue tied there, but moving forward, it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep this going all the way through the Coca-Cola 600, and if they're still performing this way with this great form heading into Charlotte weekend. then definitely I think we can consider them serious contenders to not be eliminated in the round of 16. And if they just keep it going, he might have a shot to advance to the round of 12. But I'm going to say I'm quite stunned to see that Michael McDowell is running this well to start off a season at 3 completely different racetracks.
3 completely different racetracks, and of course, looking really good. I know one comment from the chapter from Hunter, besides McDowell, I would say Chase Elliott struggling was a surprise. When it came to Chase Elliott, we saw him up front. Did that surprise anybody really? Or was that just something where, especially, we saw Kyle Larson up front. What was everyone's take on Chase?
I actually wasn't surprised to see him get up front a little bit earlier, but Chase was one of the comers and goers. He went up front, got to battle for the lead, even took the lead at one point, and then Chase Elliott slipped back, and that was basically it. But if I'm Chase Elliott, I'm definitely not going to hang my head on this finish because we still got a long way to go during the season. I'm sure we're going to see the number 9 Napa Chevrolet in victory lane multiple times.
Yeah, Chase, I think, had a decent day. Got up front, led for just a handful of laps there, and still came across the line. Actually, I don't know. I'm trying to pull up the results here. It looks like he was 14th, so not a terrible day. Certainly not a great day when you consider his teammate won the race and Kyle Larson was up there contending as well. But I don't think it's anything to be concerned about if you have a number 9 team.
I would have to say, earlier in the race, when we saw Kyle Larson up front, that didn't surprise me. The Hendrick Motorsports vehicles, okay, they're not doing anything wow. No wow factor, really. But then at the end of stage 2, when William Byron took the win of stage 2 away from Truex and Denny Hamlin, that seemed to be a really defining moment in his race. He was up front for the rest of the race and returned from less of a surprise of, wow, he got stage 2 to, okay, now they're showing the potential. They are, after all, Hendrick Motorsports, something we anticipate them to be contending week in and week out. Now, 3 races are in the books: the 500, the road course, and Homestead. Does any team right now look like they're going to be a weekly contender for the win? Or does it seem more pretty much even with everybody still? I mean, only 2 drivers, top 10 finishes.
Well, Joe, I think with all the parity that we've seen so far during these first 3 weeks of the racing season, I think it's going to be anybody's game. Of course, gonna look at Joe Gibbs Racing, Hendrick Motorsports, Stuart Haas. I'm sure Team Penske Team Penske be in there as well. So I can't really say for sure which team on RCR and Roush Fenway were really strong today. So can't count those out. Can't count out those teams. So I definitely think it's really anybody's game right now. And as Fox says, could this be the best season ever?
Totally agree. You've got 3 different races won by 3 different drivers on 3 different teams with 3 different manufacturers. So I think the parity is certainly at a level we haven't seen in a while. I'm sure Kevin Harvick's going to continue to be very, very strong. We've seen him have a good start to the year as well, despite not winning a race yet. But I think absolutely any of the top teams that we're used to seeing up front could be weekly contenders for the victory.
Yeah, Kevin Harvick, I anticipate, especially in Las Vegas, he might be a favorite to win. When it comes to everybody else, the parity level does look really close, but I think at some point, maybe in the summertime, maybe we'll start to see the gap between the big teams and the small teams grow and some of the favorites towards the front.
Yeah, definitely. And now moving on to the Repco Supercar Series, their season got underway this weekend, and the second race of the weekend came down to green flag pit stops. Cam Waters' final stop was slower than planned. Shane Van Gisbergen got around him and never looked back. On yesterday's Grid Live pre-race, we wondered if anybody could beat him. Chaz Moster's name came up, and he came on third. Are Red Bull and Shane Van Gisbergen a step ahead of everyone else?
I wouldn't say they're exactly a step ahead of the competition, but definitely, if you're going to beat Shane Van Gisbergen and the Red Bull team, you have to be 100% almost near perfect. What they showed, it got the pole. We saw Cam Waters had to lead, but that pit stop was the difference and was really hard to get around him. And I think, especially in his first race, he started third, he got the win. Shane does look like he's going to be the person to beat. I don't think they're exactly a full step ahead of the competition, but if you're going to beat them, you have to do everything right.
Yeah, definitely have to do everything right. Make sure you don't make those mistakes. And I'm sure Shane Van Gisbergen is really happy that Scott McLaughlin left the series and he's racing in the NTT IndyCar Series with Team Penske because if Scott McLaughlin was in that race and Team Penske stayed in the series, we'd probably be talking about it. Scott McLaughlin weekend sweep instead of Shane Van Gisbergen. And on March 20th and 21st, that's going to be the next race weekend for the Supercar Series. And the former Penske, Dick Johnson's team, they really aren't off to a good start this season. They weren't in contention for the one all. However, they do have two new drivers in the team with Will Davison and Anton De Pasquale. Is this due to new drivers expecting growing pains in a new environment, a reshuffle in team management, and just time in general needed to develop chemistry?
Yeah, I feel it's just all part of you got a brand new team essentially with the shuffling, Dick Johnson racing, no more Penske involvement, two new drivers. On the surface, the car looks the same. That's pretty much it. Everything else has changed within that team. And overall, seeing how the second race went, I think they're heading the right direction. Just, you can't expect first race, new team, essentially new drivers, new management, and then just go out there contending for a win like you did the prior season.
Yes, and one thing from the Supercars broadcast that I remember, they were talking about Antoine De Pasquale in general, wondering if he can be the next big thing in Supercars, and they were showing from the time he started in the series and until now how he has moved up in the points every year, and I believe he finished 8th in last year's points, and it's just like been an uphill climb for Antoine De Pasquale, and now he's with more competitive equipment with the Shell team, and it's going to be interesting to see how Antoine De Pasquale does moving forward. Like, is he going to be able to win in Supercars? That's a question yet to be answered. In the last several years, Scott McLaughlin has dominated the Supercar Series, and Shane Van Gisbergen was the runner-up last year. Will SVG be as dominant as Scott McLaughlin since he doesn't have to compete against him anymore?
I don't know. I mean, we've seen the team looks really good. Will it be on the same level of what Scott McLaughlin did? That's going to be really interesting to see. Of course, Scott McLaughlin, that team, they had everything going great. Shane, I do think the potential, but when it comes to the number of wins, I just don't see him pulling that same kind of dominating performance as Scott McLaughlin did.
Oh, yeah, yes, definitely. And I just went back and looked at the Supercars race winners from last season, and Anton De Pasquale did get one win. So it's going to be interesting to see when he's going to win his first race with the Shell powered team. And answer your question, yeah, I agree. I think it's a little too early to tell how Shane Van Gisbergen is going to do in comparison to Scott McLaughlin. We're going to see Shane Van Gisbergen completely run away with this championship, or when we get to other tracks, we're going to see more contenders. Cam Waters definitely looks strong during the weekend, despite what happened in race one. And Chaz Mostert, someone I think we need to watch out for. Well, I saw Adam's comment there. Yes, it was really wonderful to see all of the fans back at the track, and that's just really what happens when a lot of people buy in, follow all the rules, and you get rewarded. So really happy for all the fans down under who were able to attend the racetrack and not have to follow all of the restrictions that we have in much of the world.
Another part of the world that saw racing, World Rally Championship over in the Arctic, Finland. Ott Tanak took his first win of the season. Essentially, Kalle Rovanperä came home second place in his Toyota and inherited the points lead. The reason why? Sebastian Ogier, the points leader coming into the weekend, spun into a snowbank on the final corner of stage 8 yesterday. He was unable to finish the race. Very painful to see. So close to the finish line. You can see the finish line right there, but you're stuck in the snowbank. He came home 20th in the race. Now, 12 rounds. The first 2 are done, so there's only 10 rounds left. So a lot of people are wondering, is Rovanperä ready to prove he can lead the Toyota team and take away the role as sort of number 1 driver from Ogier? When it comes to that, I think the next race, especially Croatia, that's going to be the big test for Rovanperä. Go out there, get that win, or definitely finish ahead, lead the Toyota group. One of the big things they have to contend with is the Hyundai team, Thierry Neuville. He finished out the top 3, coming home in 3rd place. The next race is the World Rally Championship, Croatian Rally, April 22nd through the 25th. So this is the final race of the WRC before the grid ranking So here is the grid rating right now for World Rally Championship. One of the big things, Robin Perrin, Newville, Evans, Ogier, and Ott Tanak, the top 5, they will be in the grid ranking week 1. Formula E and World Rally Championships are the only 2 series to not have a driver lead the grid ranking. WRC this year might be very close. It came down to the last race last year where we saw the points leader had issues, drop out of the race, and Sebastian Ogier took home another championship. However, one of those big things, of course, one driver dominating the series could change all that. When it comes to the grid ranking, Sir Lewis Hamilton, Martin Truex Jr., and 2 times Marc Marquez are the grid ranking world champions.
Yesterday's NASCAR Xfinity Series race produced plenty of action with massive tire fall-off strategy, multiple grooves, and lots of passing. Colic Racing decided to pit towards the end of Stage 1 while others stayed out on worn tires. After restarting outside the top 20, it only took the Colic cars a couple of laps to get to the front, and it was a good battle for the win between the 11 and the 16. But A.J. Allmendinger came out on top with fresh tires, flew to the front, won Stage 1, and Stage 2 went to Austin Center, but all eyes were on the underdog team, Our Motorsports. Brett Moffitt had a fast number 02 Chevrolet, actually running an unsponsored car, believe it or not. Moffitt took the lead, had a fun battle with Noah Gragson for the lead. Gragson eventually got around him. Moffitt tried to fight back, got into the wall, had a flat tire, and unfortunately the 02 had to pit, but he was able to recover to finish inside the top 10, 8th place. It seemed like Noah Gragson had this race in the bag and cruise control with a few laps to go until the unthinkable happened. One of the things that you hope you never see when you are the leader in the final laps. David Starr was having a great run, and Carl Lowndes, number 13 Whataburger Toyota Supra, running inside the top 15 in an underfunded ride. Starr slid up the track, hit the wall directly in the path of Gragson, running the high line, who crashed into the back of Starr, out of the lead and out of the race. Gragson was really upset with David Starr and felt like he was the one to blame. Was there anything Noah could have done differently here, or was that just one of those unfortunate racing incidents?
I don't think you can put blame on either driver here. You're asking if there's anything Noah Gragson could have done differently. I would say maybe you could retroactively argue that he could have backed off a little bit, but you can't tell a racing driver to slow down. And that's not, I don't think that's in Noah Gregson's personality either. I think he's a young driver that definitely wants to show what he's made of. And even if he has an 8-second lead, he's going to try to win the race by 9 seconds. And when it comes to David Starr, I get Noah Gragson being frustrated, upset, and even angry. But there's nothing David Starr could have done. He had a tire. It wasn't flat if you look at the pictures, but there's still nothing he could have done going into the corner to avoid sliding of a track, hitting the wall. If you look at the replay, he actually hits the wall before Noah Gragson runs to the back of him. So it's just an unfortunate situation of racing, but that's how racing goes sometimes.
I would have to agree. That's just the way racing goes. We've seen this in the other series as well, too. A lap down car, or even, other instances where something goes wrong and you see the leader get taken out. I know the frustration Noah must be feeling. Had a huge lead. Coming up on a slower car. Yes, it's easy to think about, maybe I should have let off, take it a little easy just in case something happens. But these are race car drivers. You have an 8-second lead, you want to see if you can get a 9-second lead, a 10-second lead. Keep it expanded. It's just really unfortunate racing situation.
Yeah, definitely. I believe it was an unfortunate racing situation as well. And for Noah Gragson, he's going to have to put this behind him. And Monday mornings, 8 a.m., start fresh. And with the Xfinity Series going to Las Vegas, that's his hometown, his home track. Noah be going home and try to go out there and get a win in Sin City. And this incident set us up for a late race restart in a season of first-time winners. We got another one. Myatt Snyder held off Tyler Reddick and Brandon Jones to win his first career Xfinity race. Definitely an exciting day for Richard Childress Race and his sponsor Tax Slayer, securing a spot in the playoffs. Tyler Reddick's unsponsored number 23 Chevrolet, prepared by Our Motorsports, fell post-race inspection, promoting Brandon Jones to the runner-up spot. And here's what the top 2 finishers had to say.
Tonight was kind of eventful, we were up and down. I don't think that at any time we had maybe the car to lead all the laps in the race, or our Supra wasn't able to do that, but I could have competitively run top 3 lap times pretty much the entire race. So we continue to get better and better, and I found some stuff that picked a bunch of lap time up early in the day, and it even carried over into the nighttime. So I was pretty proud to be able to continue to build that notebook, continue to get some stuff there on this track. But yeah, third was really good, and especially at the end there. And I figured that we were going to have that third place restart, and must have got beat by those two guys whenever we had the incident there with, I think it was the 16. So yeah, I mean, this was pretty good. I'm always constantly trying to think of how I could do a little better, maybe try to get the win. And you guys have seen me on restarts. We were pretty aggressive and able to make moves, but we're just going to take this momentum, third place, good points today, and keep building off of it.
I guess I got a great second chance there in the second restart, because I saw the first time, obviously I spun my wheels and I didn't quite get going anywhere, and so I saw that Tyler happened to do the same thing on the second restart. So I knew that if I could just lay as much power down as I could and get out ahead of everybody, then I'd have a great chance. So it's just amazing to finally be in this position, to having won a NASCAR Xfinity race with a great sponsor like Tax Slayer, great team like Richard Childress Racing, other great partners like Louisiana Hot Sauce and Spear Essex, and just the amount of support that I have behind me is unreal. And I'm so happy for everybody.
Back to the NASCAR Cup Series, Homestead, Miami saw some great racing in the daylight and plenty of surprises in the running order. Chris Buescher was one of the biggest surprises of the day. Had a fast car, won stage one, looked good to start stage two, and then a late restart shuffled him back. As I mentioned earlier in our program, Chris Buescher's car faded as we went through that transition of daylight to darkness. And Ben mentioned Ford seemed to work better in the daytime, and once the sun went down, it was basically game over for Chris Buescher. But William Byron ended up taking the stage two win after Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex Jr. raced each other very hard off turn 4, fighting for the lead in the stage victory. And I know those two drivers weren't particularly happy with each other for allowing William Byron to win that stage. And several drivers did say that they really love this track and that we should come back to Homestead more than once. So in your opinion, do you want to see the NASCAR Cup Series race at Homestead twice a year?
I would definitely love to see them come to Homestead more than once a year. The racing grooves, multiple lines, the transition really made the race something where, you have to get a good setup. It's a 400-mile race. We're not talking about another 500-mile race. It goes a little too long. Considering the time, I know some folks want an earlier time, but I think this racetrack is worthy of a second race date.
In a perfect world, if it were up to me, we'd have 30 races at 30 different tracks. I think most racing series, very rarely do you see them go to the same track twice a year. I know NASCAR is a little bit different in that regard. But if we have to have tracks that we go to twice a year, and you have tracks like Pocono, which historically have not put on super great races, I don't mean to call Pocono out specifically, but that's just one that comes to mind off the top of my head, where the racing hasn't been as entertaining in recent years. And then you look at a track like Homestead, which I think is arguably the best mile-and-a-half track we have on the schedule right now. I think it's a shame that it's no longer the finale, because I think it always put on a great show. I think it definitely should be a worthy candidate of getting a second date.
Yeah, definitely. With Homestead, Miami losing that championship race, I do think that it would be a worthy candidate of having a second race there. Considering, I agree with you, it is the best mile-and-a-half track on the schedule, and I think it's a real shame that it's no longer the season finale. And I feel like it should still be the season finale, but that's a long discussion for another day. And we mentioned Chris Buescher having a really fast car during the first half of the race and fading later on. And we do have video of Chris Buescher talking about today's race.
A really good start for us, and I was really happy with the speed we had in the daylight in our Fast and Ford Mustang. Really proud of this group. I think we knew this would be a pretty good test for what we were able to have made gains on during the off season, and I think that showed that a lot of things we hit on and are heading in the right direction. With that, unfortunately, the night did not do us a whole lot of favors, and Dirty Air was really rough on us there at the end. But we still learned a ton out of it. A little bit of fender damage that may have slowed us down. I mean, it's an excuse basically. So we got to keep working at it hard. But I am really proud of everybody and everyone back at the shop. They did a really nice job on this race car. I think we made some awesome gains. We just got to keep our heads down, going to Vegas, and see what we can apply, and definitely work on what we can make better as the race goes on.
On the NASCAR Fox broadcast, Kaz, Jeff Gordon, Mike Joy, Clint Boyer, they were talking about reasons why Chris Buescher and Roush Fenway Racing ran so well today. You see Ryan Newman finish in the top 10. For early portion of the race, had both Roush cars in the top 10. And they alluded to Jimmy Finnan, who was a part of the former crew chief, who was a part of the Super Speedway program. And for everyone who's been watching, Roush Fenway Racing has built some really fast cars on the super speedways in recent years, and that was because Jimmy Finnan was overseeing that program. And now they've given Jimmy Finnan a promotion where he's overseeing the entire program as a whole. And the broadcast booth, they were just speculating that potentially that getting Jimmy Finnan in charge of the entire program as a whole, we're finally starting to see the first impacts of that. And if that's the case, Roush Fenway Racing is definitely going to be moving forward this year and taking another step to returning to being a more competitive organization, and throughout the race, multiple lines, changing track conditions. We saw a bunch of comers and goers. Next weekend, NASCAR is heading out to Las Vegas Motor Speedway to start off the 2021 West Coast Swing. After today's race, are you looking at any potential favorites entering Las Vegas, or is it still too early to say?
Hey, the way the season's been going so far, I'm not ready to make any sort of predictions when it comes to favorites. Like I said, 3 different teams from 3 completely different manufacturers. I think really anybody's going to be going to have a shot to win when we get to Vegas.
When it comes to Vegas, I'm looking at the Fords. Kevin Harvick, I think he has a good shot. Joey Logano, even Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney has run strong there, having a lousy start to the season. I'm looking at a Ford being a potential favorite, but overall, I do have to agree with you that I do think it's still quite early, and almost anybody could go out there and get a win.
Yeah, Joe took the word straight out of my mouth. I was going to say, although I'm not going to share my pick a winner yet, I think it might be a good weekend for the Fords to get into victory lane, and also Team Penske. I know they started off strong today and faded in the later stages of the race, so I definitely think that Team Penske could bounce back and win at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And it's certainly going to be interesting, with all of the parity we're seeing. Are we going to see another surprise winner? Or are we going to see a first-time winner? It's just really crazy. And I think the best type of racing is the thing that you don't expect when you turn on the TV or go to the track if you're in attendance in person. And before we end our program, all of our viewers from last season, I'm sure you remember the Grid One Shining Moment, where we all personally highlight one significant moment from the racing weekend that we want to talk about. So since this is the first Grid Shining Moment of the season, Ben, you're new to our program, so I'll let you go first. What is your one Grid Shining Moment?
It has to be Michael McDowell and Front Row Motorsports. We've talked about it extensively on the program here, but I don't think anybody could have predicted that they'd get off to such a strong start to the season.
When it comes to the shining moment so far this season, I would have to say World Rally Championship, Kali Rovanpera, strong finishes overall, has the points lead, going to Rally Croatia. I think he has a lot of potential to essentially contend for that first championship there.
And I'm going to go with Tyler Reddick. As we saw earlier in today's race, Tyler Reddick was nowhere. At one point, I looked at time and scoring, and he was running 25th. It was just a dismal start to the day. And a lot of people were saying, like, where's Tyler Reddick been? We picked him to win this race, and he's nowhere to be seen. Like, did Tyler Reddick even show up to the racetrack today? But as the race went on, we saw Tyler Reddick slowly climb to the front, and then all of a sudden you blink, and Tyler Reddick finishes second. Like, where in the heck did he come from? And I just think it just shows that when times get tough early in the race, you just need to remain calm, that it's a long race. Anything can happen. Tyler Reddick kept digging and ended up having a strong day after all. I believe if we had another caution there at the end, he could have potentially challenged William Byron for the win.
We invite everyone to invest in the Grid Network. Join our Patreon page, link in the video description. Join Colin in keeping us on the air throughout 2021. Special thank you to our new YouTube and Twitter followers and subscribers. Be sure to follow us at grid_WML for the latest of the Grid World Motorsport League. Monday, tomorrow, the Grid WML newest release is coming out for the second weekend. Be sure to get your furry family member goodies from Publis. 10% discount for Grid Network viewers. Link in the video description. Everything from dog leashes, clothing, and accessories for dogs of all sizes, and a portion of your purchase goes for helping homeless, sick, and rescue dogs, a great cause that we support. Wednesday, Grid Tonight, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, will definitely have the latest on Formula E and what happened with the missile situation. Thursday, Women Racing to Win. And of course, we encourage everyone. Last Friday, our newest episode, Life on the Grid, came out. Daniel McFadden and music from Katie Jane. Great episode. We invite everyone to check that out. Then Saturday, Grid Live pre-race. We have a lot of racing coming up this next couple of weeks. And of course, we're in March. We're going to have more racing with Formula One starting up shortly, IndyCar later on. It's going to be a very exciting time. Be sure to subscribe to the Grid Network. For Ben Schneider, Kobe Lambus from the Podium Finish, I'm Joe Sandiego. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Joe Samaniego here. Want to invite you to go check out Publis. Publis is a dog clothing and accessory company based in Austria. 10% of each of your purchases goes to helping dogs in need, whether it's homeless, sick, or ill dogs. This is one of the reasons why we support it. Kiska here is a rescue dog from rural Alaska and our Grid office dog. We care about our furry buddies, and we know you do as well. Definitely check out Publis.com. There's a link on the video description, and by clicking on that link, you get a 10% discount on your purchase as well.